Have you ever looked back on a season of your life and realized that there was a story happening besides yours that you never fully understood? In the last 5 episodes, we've heard about my memories, my grief, my perspective. And tonight, you're going to meet another person who walked through the same fire and still came out with ashes on the other side, but in a different direction. Meet Charity.
You never been just my sister. You are my made for me best friend. We're dancing through the heights, surviving all the low.
Welcome back to The Girl in Ashes. Tonight we have a special guest for the first time ever. And honestly, there is nobody more important in this story than the person sitting next to me who went through the same burning building as I did. Everyone meet my sister Charity.
Hello.
Welcome. Hi. We're going to start off with, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about you, like how much older you are than me, who you are, just a little bit, like nobody's met you before. This is all for strangers.
Well, first I'd like to thank you for inviting me as a guest here on The Girl in the Ashes. I give you props for doing this, for allowing the outside world to see the inside you. You've been very vulnerable and you've done an excellent job in telling the story and accounting the details the way you remember, many of which I conveniently had blocked out. I am Robin's sister. We are about 8 years apart. I'm older. 8 years older. But we have been close and we've been in this thing together. We had our arguments and all that when we were younger, but music and church really brought us together. And now we are connected.
That's actually going to be one of my first questions, which you kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe a little different if I frame it. How would you describe our relationship if you were to describe it in one word?
Connected.
Oh, very nice. I like it. I like it. I didn't think about what my answer would be because it's not about me. This is about you. So we're going to start in segments tonight as we go through this interview / perspective process. The title of episode 6 is Her Perspective. Section 1, we're going to touch about our mother. A mother. I'm going to say the first thing. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say, let's think about mom?
Her laugh, she had one of the greatest laughs. You mentioned that in one of your podcasts. Her laugh was infectious for sure. Also her quick wit and also her hyperness, just every little thing. It didn't take much. Patience was not her thing. Fully understanding was not her thing. If she had not already experienced it, might as well forget that.
Very high strung.
Very high strung. Very high strung.
Short tempered, high strung, but you know.
But she really loved. She really loved people. She really loved the church people. Loved her family.
What is something that you would say people never got to see about her or know about her that was really true? Something she hid.
How much she did truly care, about people. If she knew that someone else was in need, if she knew that someone else had bills that needed to be paid, she would sacrifice her own for them, make a way.
What lesson from mom still impacts your life today?
That's a hard one because there are so many.
Just the very first thing that comes to mind. It may not be the latest and greatest, but something that impacts you still today that she definitely instilled.
The importance of family, the importance of her household, the importance of taking care of your husband and your children, the importance of safety. She was often worried about everything, so because she wanted to make everybody safe. So I would definitely say the importance of family. There's just so many things. It's hard to think of one.
What is one of the most mom things that mom ever did that comes to mind? That's like clearly like, yeah, that's mom.
When we were on vacation one year in Tennessee and we sat in the van, it was a rental van, and she went to the store by herself and came back out and totally got into someone else's rental van, and we sat there and watched as she literally got in, and we were parked next to them, but she went into the wrong place.
We totally did. That was great humor for our father. He just sat there and watched and said, oh my God, she's really getting in that other van.
Yes.
Didn't like holler out the window or nothing. We just let her ride out. It was perfect.
We were just in shock. We couldn't really believe that was happening, that she was going to get in. And the crazy thing is, there was somebody in the back seat of that van with a broken leg. So they had their leg up, elevated on the seat. So that was, and we were like, wow, couldn't believe she was doing that.
That's hilarious.
She often put her foot in her mouth too. She wasn't one to think before she spoke. So she would just say whatever, and it didn't always have the smoothest delivery.
Right. All right, so we're going to transition a little bit, talking about mother and those types of things. We're going to touch on a lot of topics, but one thing that a lot of people did not know, and probably still don't know, is that while mom was fighting her battle, you had a battle of your own that arose, that you kind of kept private, held close for a while. Tell us about, take us back, tell us about what it was like and what it felt like when you received your breast cancer diagnosis.
Well, as you mentioned in previous podcasts, our family unit was very connected. I mean, as far as the four of us, even though I no longer lived in the home, I was over at the parents' house weekly, several times a week. We were all one unit. We were all on the same goal. We all attended the same church. We all played music. We all did everything together. The family, it was a package deal. And even though we knew that mom was sick and we knew that she was having issues, and she went into the hospital December of 22, right after Christmas. We like you said in previous things, we really believed it was going to have a different outcome. There was just too many Holy Ghost times at church, too many prayer calls. We just really didn't look for it to end the way it did. In my experience, in the end of December of 22, I had just a traditional mammogram, just a regular checkup. I didn't think too much of it, just part of what you have to do. And then it was right, I guess at the beginning of January, I knew I was going to start a new job on January 16th of 23. And I was ending the current job on January 10th of 23. So I went ahead and scheduled, they had called me and said, hey, I need you to do a diagnostic mammogram. So I went ahead and scheduled it for the very next day. And so it was January the 11th, I had went in to go get the diagnostic mammogram. I did not know what to expect other than what I had read on Google. And they had it at the Cancer Center, the Hill Breast Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center. Again, I had never experienced any of this, so I really did not know what to expect. I walk in, and the room is full of other people who have experienced or are currently in the battle of cancer, which was very odd. You know, I'm still thinking to myself the entire time, oh, this is nothing, it's just, protocol. And so I walk in and get the robe and just sit there and wait, really not knowing what to expect. I get called back. I go into the room and they do the diagnostic mammogram, which was basically just more images. And I could tell by the look of the person that whatever they were seeing wasn't good. And so they had told me before that the process was you have a diagnostic mammogram, and if you needed an extra thing, then you would have a biopsy. Otherwise, they would do the diagnostic, you'd go home, you'd be fine. So I waited in the room, and another doctor had come in. They had me in a waiting area. Another doctor came in, went over it and says, hey, we think we need to do a biopsy. Well, again, I'm new to this. I'm not thinking, I mean, I can see the facial expressions, but I'm not really thinking cancer per se. I'm just thinking like, oh, okay, this is normal. And so I explained to them that I was getting ready to start another job on the 16th, and my insurance was going to run out. So maybe the quicker the better. Well, and I have to preface everything that we're talking about. You talked a lot about in your previous podcast about God and our faith and our belief. And I do 100% believe that God already knows in advance what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, and He puts people in place to prepare in those seasons way before we ever do. And the girl says, listen, I'm going to see what I can do, and we're going to see if we can get you in tomorrow, which is a very unheard of thing. Normally, for a biopsy, you'd have to go through getting the insurance to approve it. You have to go through all the processes. It's very unusual to have it the very next day. So I went on about my business. I didn't talk to anybody. I think maybe Dad had known that I had went to doctor, but I never told Mom. I never talked to Mom about it. And that was I guess that was on a Wednesday. Well, then that Wednesday afternoon or evening is when we went to the hospital, and that was the day that she had her dialysis. And so I went into the room, and you and Dad I had relieved you guys, so you and walked around, and so I just waited in the empty room until she got there. And when she did get there, she looked rough. And I just remember sitting there going, oh man, this is not good. You know, you had that creepy, eerie, gross feeling, because I know you talked about it earlier. One of my greatest fears in life was that we were going to lose them.
Right.
You know, it was, let's do everything we can to preserve and help, because, hey, we have things that they need to see. So she came into the room, she was pretty much out of it. And I was just kind of walking around the room. I'm like, oh, this is a terrible feeling, but I'm trying to overcome it. I'd gotten a call that afternoon that they did schedule my biopsy for the next day. So I was like, well, that's great. I didn't tell anybody about this. Again, I wasn't thinking anything major at this point. So then, and the next day it comes. It is the day I'm getting ready to go to the breast center to get the biopsy. I receive a call from you to tell me how the night was before, and that didn't feel very good. Like, oh man, that's not really good. I had this very uncomfortable, unsettling feeling, and I did the only thing that I know how to do, and it's pray. And I was just praying. The Holy Ghost met. It was just me in my bedroom. And God just kind of let me know that she wasn't going to come out. It's not, and I was begging, no. You know, you can't let it end this way. You can fix this. And, you know, begging, hoping, pleading that was not going to be the end. I went to go to my biopsy, same place I went the day before. I'm sitting there waiting. I had it done, and while I was waiting to be bandaged back up, my phone was going off the hook. I saw Steve was calling. I saw you were calling. I knew that this was not good. My cousin Steve never calls, so there's definitely a problem. I answered the phone. I told you, said, hey, I'm just waiting to get bandaged, basically. And you said, that's fine, I'm just going to wait on you. So, okay. So I got the attention of a nurse and said, hey, I've got to go. My mom's in the hospital. It's not looking good. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And so she quickly bandages me up. And I literally am there I'm bruised. And I have a, ace bandage around the chest thing. And I'm like, okay. And so I get in the car, I call you and say, hey, I'm on my way. And you said, okay, so let's just wait till I get there and we'll walk in together. Because we didn't know we were going to face we had that terrible sinking feeling, but you just never know. And so I got there. You and I had walked in together, and as you said in previous podcasts, we saw our cousin Steve and his wife and the shaking of the head, and we're like, oh man. And so here it comes, our church training from our entire existence on the planet. Our whole lives we have been raised and taught that you do not show emotion. You don't talk about what you're feeling because somebody else has it worse. God understands all things, so we don't question it. And no matter what it looks like, things could be worse, so this is just temporary.
And you've got to be strong for others.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to carry everybody else's grief.
So we walk in, I see Dad, I see Mom's lifeless body. I can't believe this is real in the moment. My cousin's wife, Beth, hugs us. She's looking super confused because, her family is okay with emotion.
Right.
She didn't understand why everyone is like, man up, Mo. Well, Dad's losing it. And my immediate thought is just like your thought, okay, now we have to make sure he's good. I mean, I don't know how we're going to get through anything, but it's business mode. We've got to just do this. I think he must have mentioned to Beth at the time about that I had a mammogram or something because she inquired about it. And like I told you how that God places people in your life and your seasons way before you advance. Well, she had already experienced breast cancer about a year to a year and a half prior. So at the time, I didn't realize that was going to be beneficial, but it was. So we moved through all of that. I'm sore, I'm bruised, I'm walking around in an ace bandage with a big t-shirt. Dad's losing it. I know I have to call the people that for my new job and say, hey, I'm going to have a funeral to attend next week. What's going on? I mean, it was just moving. That following Monday, which was the 16th of January, I had received the phone call that it was positive for breast cancer. I was at home. I was alone. I lived alone. I did not have my fur baby. He wasn't even in the picture. He wasn't even born yet. There was no boyfriend. It was me. I was alone. So I was home in my office. They had called. I'm so sorry to tell you this. You do have breast cancer. We'll be following up with more. And I had to I got off the phone, just kind of sat there with it. Like, okay, it's another thing.
Okay, so in that moment, did you have fear? Were you scared? Did you wish that something was different? Like, what would you like some people to, if they were sitting in that room, know about the emotions that you felt in that moment?
Honestly, I did not, in that moment, allow myself to feel anything.
Right. So would you say that you were numb
Absolutely.
already because of what we were facing?
I can honestly say from the very moment we walked into that hospital room, the only emotion I did feel was numbness. It was not, I could see other people crying, and every now and again I could feel a sense of, oh, that's really bad for that person. I can't imagine how awful this must be for you to lose your spouse. Right. Oh my goodness, the church people, they've lost their first lady. This is awful. This is terrible. But I was disassociating to the point where I couldn't connect that this was happening to me. It was actually a real thing for me. And so that Monday night, we went to Mellow Mushroom, you, Dad, and I, after funeral home junk, we came to Mellow Mushroom, and my primary care physician called while we were sitting there at the table, and I stepped outside to take the phone call. And she was such a sweet, that primary care physician is a godsend. She is a Holy Ghost filled Christian. She will speak life, and she called, and I told her what was going on, and we cried and prayed and spoke in tongues over the phone, which is something I've never experienced before with any healthcare provider in my lifetime. But she reassured me, we're going to get through it. Everything's going to be okay. We caught it early. It's small right now. And I'm like, great. So I came back into the restaurant. I did tell you and Dad what they had said. And of course, Dad falls apart. Oh my God, what are we going to do? And, but at that moment, it didn't matter what we were going to do or what was going to happen. All we knew at the moment is, hey, I have to make sure you're good, and we keep it moving, and we be a support for everybody else. 2 days after that, we had the funeral. I remember in one of your podcasts, you said it's hard for you to remember a lot about that funeral.
Very much.
I also blocked out a lot about that. I remember us going to the funeral home. I remember us panicking to find what to wear. I remember her leading you to the outfit that she had, what pin we were going to put on, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
The day of the funeral, I drove you and Dad to the funeral home. Dad was a mess. We walked in. There's all eyes staring. We go to the front. We don't want to be at the front, but we're there at the front. The casket's open. All of this is like some other kind of nightmare that we're having. But again, I never really connected it as this is really happening in real life in this moment to me.
Right. Okay. So let's take a pause there. So we've made it to the funeral. Let's rewind for a second. There was a huge part of the experience with Mom that me as a person who normally controlled as much as I could not handle Mom's suffering. So I took a back seat, and for the first time, I think in majority of our life, you had to step forward as a caregiver because I just could not. What, in the moment of watching Mom suffering, did that have an impact on you as a person in a new role? And how did that affect your faith, watching her decline from, I'm going home in faith that this is going to be healed, to December, she's in the hospital for the last time. And in that month and a half gap, you were there.
Oh, I was so angry at her birthday that Dad put up a walking rail and rails in the bathroom for her because it made me upset that he was giving in to the ailment because we were believing in faith, and this felt like why, and his response was, well, it's helpful for everybody. It's not just a crutch. It's helpful for anybody. Anybody can lose balance. And we're like, okay. In that moment of helping her, I did see her suffer, and it was not anything I would ever want anybody else to experience. The fluid coming out of the arms, the way her toe, and the way she was out of her head sometimes. I would never want anybody to have to see their loved one in that state. How it changed me as a person, I was guilty, just like you were, of feeling like, oh, there's more she could have done. Has she changed this, or has she changed that, or has she done this? Well, it was hereditary, and it wasn't something that she necessarily had the power to change unless maybe it was diet and exercise 10 years prior to that. She would have had to have actively done that far beginning, but I really walked through all of that in denial, in numbness and denial. I saw what was happening, but I refused to accept that.
Right, same.
Yeah, I saw it was happening, but I've been in places where I've seen God deliver people from impossible situations. So he could regrow a toe, he could regrow veins, he can do anything. So why would I doubt him in that? My faith, it was hard to see it, and I would battle with that. And I would go home, and I really was angry more than anything. And when I would go home to my empty house and it was just me and God, I'd be like, I don't understand this, because how are you gaining glory from this?
Right.
I didn't understand that. I didn't understand how, you could sit there and allow someone to suffer. I mean, obviously later, it was much later before we really realized all that was going on in her life and how many years she had struggled with it. But I still to this day believe if someone walked in that same situation, God is still capable and able to heal them. That has not deterred me from thinking he's not able or capable. He is. Mom's faith was very strong for a long time. There were several times in our lives where she would pray and you just knew that it was going to happen, and there was no question, it was done. And there would be times she'd walk away and say, it's done.
Yes, multiple times.
It's done. You ain't got to worry about it.
If the Holy Ghost hit her, then you just walk away and believe, because that's all it took.
That's all. It's done. You ain't got to worry about
that
it.
That was God's confirmation.
Yeah.
Don't be doubting it.
Yeah. What I learned through that was so many things. All of my life, especially, 20s, especially in my 20s, and probably even early 30s, but especially in my 20s, I had always desired to have that mother-daughter relationship. Yeah. I wanted to have that, let's go, just us, go to lunch, let's go have this, let's go shopping. But she was not a proponent of that. I even in the later days, hey, let me go take, no, she didn't want to spend time with just me. But I understand more now than I did then, but it was just a matter of connection. She had postpartum really bad with me. At that time, I didn't know what that even was. It took many, many years. 2015, when I took her when she was going to have her heart attack, she did apologize, and we hugged and cried and all that kind of stuff. But I don't fault her. It was just, if broken people, damaged people will continue to operate in their brokenness and their damage until they take the opportunity to find the root and heal from it. And both of my parents were phenomenal people. They great people of God, but neither of them ever took the time to truly find out what the source of their brokenness was in order to fix it. Avoidance was always the thing that we did in our household.
Oh, that was what was taught, to avoid.
You avoid it. You don't talk about feelings. You don't talk about actions. You don't talk about what happens. You just move through it and avoid it. So, God created us humans to have thoughts, emotions, feelings.
Oh, and if someone hurt you, it was your fault.
Yes,
if someone hurt you, you did it. You caused it.
Yes, I remember being in elementary school and coming home and telling my parents about someone who had mistreated me, and Dad told me to tell them, well, you may not love me, but you can't stop me from loving you. And even as a child, I didn't understand how was that helpful. But
that was avoiding. It's
avoidance.
That was teaching the child, avoid how you feel and tell them that's okay. I'm going to love you anyways.
Yeah.
And
I have to say, I can only speak for myself, and I feel like you're like that too. We grew up feeling like aliens in this world. Like you could not connect with anybody.
Big time. We still feel that way, to be honest.
Yeah, it's still a challenge to this day. But what I learned through that, with Mom, going back to all of that, is she was trying, and she wanted things to get better. This was not what she wanted either. No one would choose to be in a position where you can't even get up, or you can't walk, or you can't go anywhere, or it's taken away from the people that you love. And as Robin mentioned earlier, my dad pastored the same church for 40 years, and my mother loved those church people. She cared about them deeply, and when she learned how to text, she texted them. She wasn't much of an in-person or a phone call person, but she would reach out and find ways to connect.
Right. So that's just a snippet, obviously, of everything that from a different perspective, but we fast forward, we get through the funeral, we get through that experience, and life for us changed forever in that very moment in a big way. We're going to transition now to what that perspective looked like that we just talked about in episode 4 which from my side was refusing to quit. And we're diving into a different perspective here. There was a different relationship bond between you and Dad, obviously. And what would you say was the biggest change that you saw in Dad before the hit versus after?
Oh man, you know, some of the things I was thinking about with Dad that really stood out to me is no matter what he was facing in his own health crisis, like you mentioned, his kidneys, his back, his legs, his feet, his eyes, different things. When Mom was sick, he fed her. And I never forget sitting one day and looking at her in the hospital room and him trying to feed her and missing her mouth completely because he couldn't see it clearly. But he cared and loved her so much that he was going to do whatever it took. You know, he was very, very, very stubborn, but I think you topped him.
Whatever.
He was extremely stubborn. He was going to do it his way. He was going to find out a way. It didn't matter if he was going to guilt trip you to make it happen. He was going to make a way. So we could have taught him all day long. It wasn't going to make a difference. His whole purpose in life was Mom, the church, God, Mom, church, family. God, Mom, church, family. That was it. When Mom was taken out of the picture, I really did not know how he was going to even survive the night. I really didn't know if it was going to be like we're calling 911 or Robin's going to get up the next day and he's already going to be with her, because I just didn't know how.
Right. That covers the next question is, did you ever worry about him not surviving losing her?
Oh, yeah, because you realize that the things he was doing, he was having dialysis 3 times a week, not because he wanted it.
No.
But because we, as a family, said, absolutely, if this is going to keep you alive, we've got to go through it.
Right. We're not losing you.
And so we had the funeral on a Wednesday. I don't believe he went that day. Did he go? I don't think he went that day.
No, we did a follow-up on Friday.
Yes. And so, of course, when Friday rolled around, he had no desire in this world to get up and go.
No.
But
he said he was going to quit.
He was going to quit, but we were like, no, you're not. Both of us together can pick you up and take you. But yes, he did lose himself. He was faithful in all of his duties. He was faithful in everything that he could, but he was a shell of the man that he was. It took a long time, many, many, many months before he could laugh or he could smile or do anything. You mentioned in one of your podcasts that after the funeral we went out to eat, which to me, I still feel like is one of the weirdest things in the world that we did. We sat at 2 tables and it was
a huge group.
You know,
whole family,
20-something people, and we're eating like we had not just buried our mother.
Like we just finished a birthday party or something.
It was super, super odd to me. And I really had no idea what was going to happen coming forward. I knew that at some point we were going to have to go back to church. And it was going to be our responsibility to pick up those church people, just like at the funeral. The funeral, I mentioned before, God had brought back to that funeral in that day a good friend of ours who used to keep me as a child and her daughter. And she even says, I was so much in church mode at that time, so much to make sure everybody else was okay, that it was like, oh, hey, good to see you. I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, in the funeral that we blocked out, at Mom's funeral, we walked around and hugged everyone else.
Yep.
And greeted everyone else like we were in a church service.
Yep.
And we told other people we were sorry for their loss.
Yeah.
And it was our mother.
Yeah. And she also gave me a similar look as my cousin's wife did. Like, this is so weird. What's going on? And she was like, let's get together. And of course, in my mind, sure. But like you said, that's a whole nother topic of how the breast cancer journey, but that all played in. But with us, with moms and with dads, we did not take time to ever sit there and say, wow, we lost our mother.
Oh no, we didn't grieve her.
It was, okay, Dad, did you eat today? Did you drink? Did you get up? All right, what do we need to do for the church? What's our next event? You know, and she died in January, and Love Day was coming up in February, and that was one of her biggest, greatest, best events. And we were like, oh my gosh, what are we supposed to do about that?
We ran Love Day. Had a very successful Love Day as if nothing had happened. But I do want to take a step back. So we kind of tie all these stories together. During Mom's passing, which I didn't even realize until today, that you literally were at the doctor the day before she passed.
Yeah, I had the biopsy the day of.
Yeah.
I was actually waiting to be wrapped when she crossed over into the eternal.
Or croaked over, like so many people like to hear me say. Yeah, so those didn't even merge to me really in realization until today. So we talk about the funeral's gone, now we're facing this journey with Dad. We don't even know if he's going to survive. But at that same time, now you're stepping into the next journey of your own experience. Your breast cancer diagnosis has happened. Now you're talking about next steps. So during that first, however many, 2 months, 3 months that you went through radiation?
Yeah, that didn't come until May.
But you didn't start till May.
Yeah.
So for the first February, March, April, May, so the first 4 months, we had started our 14-month refusing to quit, right?
Right.
So before we jump into May, one of the questions I had is, out of the memories of the 14-month journey, what is one of or two of your happiest moments that we had with Dad after the massive earthquake?
I was very happy that we went to Disney because I could not remember going to Disney as a child. They said that I did when I was 4 or 5, but I don't remember it. So I was really excited that we were there with him. He rode Dumbo. We rode,
Yeah.
So it was, that part was really exciting to me that we actually went to Disney together. I really did enjoy that. I know that we also went to SeaWorld. That was a very hot experience.
We went to camp meeting
Camp meeting was hard.
to celebrate Mom.
Camp meeting was hard because we were there as a memorial to celebrate her life, and all that did was trigger him more. Seeing her picture and all of that, and he was falling apart at the hotel room. He was so weak, I didn't know we were going to get him there. We finally get him there. We're holding him. He's getting out of the van. We can barely get him inside. We get him inside. Then we have to sit in the front while he's having a hard time walking, and we are like, excuse us, excuse me, excuse us.
And
Like,
there's cords on the ground.
cords
You
on the
gotta-
ground you have to watch out for. It's like, listen, you're in that mama bear type mode, trying to say, okay, all right, guys, let's get him here so he can see and he can be okay. And what was interesting is we went to camp meeting just 2 days after I finished radiation. I finished my cousin had a baby on June 3rd, which was, I believe, a Saturday at the time. I had finished up the radiation that Monday, and we left to go to camp meeting
On Wednesday.
on that Wednesday. So, yeah, it was a lot. But thankfully I had my own room and you had your own room, and
So I could take care of the falling apart man while she rested. But, it all blurs together in these 14 months because in my recap, we're talking about the lens of keeping Dad alive and taking trips. But in that gap, like we said, you had your radiation journey. Tell us a little bit about what that was like, especially going through a time of keeping somebody alive, ignoring and feeling numb about a big hit that just happened. And now here you are facing something that not only have we not faced as a family, but it's new for you, and you kind of tell us how you felt. Did you feel alone? Who was there? Like, what was that like that you've never really talked about before?
I was alone. I came back to the house and I was alone at home. But like I said, God had brought people. Now, the pastor's wife that I was telling you about, her sister had been through breast cancer recently, so she was familiar with that. And my cousin's wife was pivotal during this thing. And one thing I'll say is, if God ever puts somebody on your heart or ever leads you to be obedient or to reach out or to be persistent, obey, because that makes a huge difference. In January, at that time of the funeral, and I had absolutely no intention at all whatsoever of ever reaching out to a single soul.
Right. That's not what we do.
I was just going to get through it.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, I was going to get through it. That February, we did Love Day. It was my first birthday without Mom. You were not able to celebrate that because you were with your dad. So I booked a trip, and I booked to go drive one of those spiders and invited a friend to come along. And I celebrated the birthday and tried to block, hey, I don't see that Facebook message. I don't see that homemade cake. All those things. I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm just blocking it.
Right.
Then during that time, March came, the beginning of March, and in the process, I had doctor's appointments. I was going to, and I asked one of my good friends, Sam, who's been my friend for 20 some odd years, I said, hey, would you mind accompanying me to a couple of these appointments, because it's so overwhelming to me. Sometimes I may not get it all. So she did. She came with me to several of the appointments, and in the process, what's your next step? Are you going to have a lumpectomy? Are you going to have a mastectomy? Are you going to have chemo treatments? Are you going to have the chemo pill? Are you going to have radiation? Let's do genetic testing and see was this a genetic problem? Because I was young when this happened. Let's go all of the options. And these things I was handling to a point until it got to the thought of not being able to have children. Now, I was thinking prior to this that there's always been an attack on my female health. Even many years ago, we had a possible cancer scare when I had a 11 centimeter cyst on one ovary and an 8 centimeter cyst on the other ovary. And we're like, oh no, I was young. I was in my early 30s, late 20s, early 30s at the time. And the doctors were like, oh, we're going to have a hysterectomy. I'm like, oh, no. Let's find other methods, because, I want to be able to have children. And that was one of the times where Dad did pray and said, hey, Jesus, you cursed the fig tree and allowed it not to ever grow. You can curse those cysts and allow them to go back down to normal and never have a problem. And thankfully, I am here today to say I did not have to have any of those things. He did. And so here it was many years later, and I was facing this same thing again. If I take this chemo pill, it's automatically going to put you into menopause, so you're not going to be able to have children. Now, my parents, neither of them believed that I would. God had promised me that I would have children and that I would have a husband way back in 2017. It had not happened. They never believed that it would, because they said, oh, you're too old. It's never going to happen. And that was one of the biggest things when Mom passed, that I thought, wow, she's never going to be able to see that come to reality. So here we are, we're going through all these things. My friend Sam, she was like, listen, you just need to kill all the cells and never have to worry about coming back. So what? You can always adopt, you can always do this. And so I had great physicians who said, hey, go to the fertility clinic, have them run tests, see what options. So I did. They told me I'd be a great candidate for embryo adoption, where I could adopt someone else's fertilized embryo, carry it, experience the pregnancy, all that kind of stuff. Even at that camp meeting, Jensen Franklin had preached that night, and I had felt the Lord just kind of say, that's not the route. Like, don't worry about embryo adoption. I've given you a promise. Here's your promise. So I did not opt for chemo or the chemo pill. I opted for radiation. Right in the beginning of March, I had the genetic testing. I had come home and I really was having a human moment. You know, I speak a lot about faith, but in that moment, I was having a very human moment. I was by myself. I was in my office. I was sitting up against the wall, and I was losing it because I could not handle the thought of not being able to have a child. During this time, my cousin's wife, Beth, did constantly pursue. And it was weekly, daily sometimes. She was reaching out, sending scriptures, sending prayers, just even though I wasn't talking about what was really happening, she knew there was a burden there. And one morning in March, I woke up and the whole right side of my face was drooping. I looked in the mirror, I couldn't smile. I said, uh-oh, something's wrong. So I reached out to one of my friends and said, hey, I'm going to send you a video of myself. Can you tell me if this is Bell's palsy? Because she's had it before. And she said, yep, it definitely looks like it. So I sent Robin and Marco. I said, hey, does my face look weird? And she said, yeah. So
I'm pretty sure I actually just panicked and told her, oh my God, go to the hospital.
So I called Teladoc. And
right. Don't go to the hospital. Just call a virtual teledoc. That sounds like the right move.
And Teladoc did a video, and they said you have to go to the emergency room.
Wow.
Right? Because you've never had this experience. Got to make sure it's not a stroke and all of that. So I drove myself to the hospital. And as soon as I walked in, they rushed me in as an emergency. I was in test after test after test, CTs, x-rays, all this kind of stuff. My head was spinning, it was so fast. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then I'm sitting there in the hospital bed, and they said, okay, we're going to have to transfer you to our big hospital across the way because we do not have the machines here. We need to have a brain scan, MRI. We need to make sure the neurological things are good to rule out a stroke. And I was just thought, okay, this is really not happening, right? You know, I'm here by myself. All this stuff, this can't be real. So I ride in the ambulance. It was raining, and we drive all the way 45 minutes across town to the exact same hospital my mother had just been in 2 months prior, and the same floor she was on. I was on the 4th floor. And we go through all of that. I'm still by myself. I'm still like in shock, really. I can't believe any of this is happening. Robin's like, hey, I can't leave Dad. He can't be alone at night. So I called Sam, or not called, I texted because I couldn't talk right. So I texted, said, hey, can you come be here with me? And she was. She spent the night there with me and was there, and we talked, and I never slept really that night that I could recall, but the sounds of her sleeping were a huge benefit to me knowing somebody was there. Beth, my cousin's wife, offered to come, which I thought was unheard of. Like, why would you leave your family to come sit here with me?
Well, shout out to this cousin she keeps talking about. Is the one I referenced as our older brother. It's
yeah,
his wife.
His wife.
You know, just in case anybody gets lost in the multiple mentions we've had of our cousin's wife so far in this episode.
You know, my cousin's wife, Beth, she was a godsend, truly. She was trying her best to unravel, not chip away all of those walls and saying, hey, I really do care about what you think. You know, I really do care about how you feel. I want you to talk to me.
Right, which is probably massive because you're wrapped up in a numbness of aloneness that you're blocking out because your sister's not there. And you're telling yourself, well, you know, she can't help it.
Right.
And your dad's not there because he's struggling through muddy grief and
your mom's
suffering.
not there. Yeah, there's nobody there.
So you probably, in that loneliness, was like, okay, this is just my plight right now.
Yeah.
So to have someone reach out that was not in that family unit.
Right.
Was a big deal. So
Well, I had learned from multiple hospital stays and visits with other people, you have to be very aware and alert for any prescriptions they try to give you,
Yeah.
and
Serious.
everything that they're doing, because they think they're doing the right thing. And insulin resistance, you and I both are allergic to insulin. We took that after our father, so
Which is very rare, by the way.
Very
If you're
rare.
hearing this, you probably think that we're crazy. We're not. We're like 1 in 10 million or something, thanks to our father's genetic makeup. Synthetic insulin does not work in our bodies, and
if you inject it, it spikes the sugar.
right, it does quite the opposite, and it breaks us out in rashes.
Yeah. So we're in March. There was still a revival going in March. We still had a revival, and I had a responsibility to play music for that revival, but I wasn't about to go there at that time with a sagging face and unable to speak and my eye drooping and leaking. And so I finally compromised and told Dad, every night, Dad, like, we really need you, And like, so that Friday night, I decided I would go. I waited till the very last minute, trying to avoid people. Walked straight up to the base. The evangelist we had that night, he was more like one of our good friends. He had been through Bell's palsy before. He had prayer, and people started coming. When they had prayer, people started coming around. It was like, all these people are coming, so you start to feel a bit of anxiousness and anxiety. And I spotted my cousin's wife, Beth. She was wearing this light blue dress at the time, and I just darted to her because I thought, there's nowhere else to go here. So I darted to her and just hugged her, and she held on to me, and I just buried my face in the crevice of her arm, and she protected me. She kept me from everybody else around me, and she prayed with me for, gosh, I don't know how long. And then the evangelist came over and prayed, and everybody prayed. But in that moment, I had found a safety.
Well, I take a step back from that and say, we always have said our whole lives and been taught our whole lives that everything happens not only for a reason, but is ordained, and also people live in seasons in our lives. So do you feel like in your faith journey and your prayers and those silent moments that God placed it on her to step into the mother role that you unfortunately couldn't have because Mom was gone?
She definitely, even though she's not that much older, definitely was very maternal. She wasn't afraid to wrap you up and just hug you and hold you. It wasn't weird to her.
Right.
Whereas many other people, like the pastor's wife I had mentioned earlier, she was older and could be a mother-like figure, but she was limited to not being able to embrace openly like that. My cousin's wife, Beth, was so emotionally available at that time to just accept and be there. And so that night we went back to Mellow Mushroom, where we had been just for a few months prior.
As an entire family.
The entire group with my sagging face, and I spilled water on myself that night. The whole drink fell, but it was good. And then that was in March. Then April, we were preparing for April. Well, the end of March, the very end of March, I had a lumpectomy, and on that day, my best friend Sam was there. My cousin's wife Beth was there,
And he was there.
and
Steve came with Dad.
yep, and you and Dad were there,
Yeah.
and Beth had given me a take-home basket with a blanket and a cup and her favorite candies, and I was still very mind blown. I couldn't believe this. Like, why would anybody be doing all this? I just didn't understand it really. And then y'all prayed with me, and then Beth and Sam walked with me all the way until I went into surgery, and stood right by me, held my hand, was right there with me the entire time. And then my Sam took me home that night, because like I said, you couldn't leave Dad. So Sam took me home that night, and she left the next day, and then it was recovery by myself. I wasn't able to drive, and I wasn't able to go anywhere yet, so I had Instacarted everything in advance. So I had groceries in advance, I had things like that. So it was just me in my house by myself with a Lego set, some coloring books, a journal, and that was kind of it.
Looking back now, what do you think was the biggest lesson that you were learning in a season of solitude?
That it's okay even if you're by yourself.
Do you think that that season made you closer in your faith with Christ, or put a wedge of misunderstanding there?
It definitely put a wedge of misunderstanding there. Because, I mean, yes, there were some church people, like I have other friends that did check on me from the church, but I didn't tell the church people anything until the very, I mean, people didn't know what was going on. It was rough. I can't say that I really got better. I know when you and Dad come over one night, you were shocked because I lost so much weight. Because it was just, I don't know, there was no, I don't know, it was a lot of, you're in pain, you're going through, you're taking your meds, you're going through the steps. I don't know, it was, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I feel like you really need people to distract you.
Yeah.
You need people to come in and just make you laugh sometimes, and you know, that wasn't the best experience, but I made it through that part, and then in the beginning of May, Beth had urged me to go to a revival of theirs, and I went reluctantly, but I went, and I just remember being so numb, bitter, and angry. They sang a song that I had sent to Mom when she was going through her battles, and I looked over at Beth and said, I can't handle this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and she said, what's wrong? And I told her, I sent this to Mom, and I believe this is going to be real. I can't sit here and people are worshiping, and it was making me angry. So, you know, I'm upset. Why are these people worshiping? You know, it didn't work. And so she leaned over, and she had tears in her eyes, and she said, you know, it's okay to be angry with God. He understands that. And I thought, okay. And so they had, it had one of those worship services, and their pastor's wife had come to me. I was standing there. I could tell you that I was completely absent from myself. You know, I was not me in any way, shape, or form. I was standing there. The pastor's wife of that church had come, and she began to pray, and I could feel something. Like it was like an instant saying, okay, that's God's there. You know, I could feel that, but I could not accept it. I had left that night in a greater turmoil than I think I had ever been. I had not yet started radiation. It was coming. I had fears about what that may be like, and all of those things. And I had called, or I reached out to a couple of people, said, hey, can I just come by tonight? And, you know, people had other things. It was, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but it was a work day of the week. And so I went home and I changed clothes, and I just thought, I'm not going to drive out to the beach, because for whatever reason, the beach was going to be a solace place, or so I thought. But my mind was so in turmoil. And when I say that God puts people in your place at the time, yes, I have been a Christian for many, many years. I had the baptism of the Holy Ghost. I understand all of those things. But at this moment, it had been quite a few months of solitude and numbness and bitterness and anger. And every time I would see Dad and see what he was going through, or go to the church, and it was eating on me in a way. I was just in turmoil. And I got out to the beach that night, and I had sent a text to Beth, and I had told her, you know, I am at the beach, which it was like midnight, so that's very odd, You're not supposed to
Really,
really.
not in Jacksonville, anyways.
Well, on a I guess
Don't
you're
be hanging out at the dark beach with no lights at midnight.
Right.
Okay.
And I was out there, and of course my thoughts were dark. I just couldn't deal with
Let's
it.
be more real there, because there's going to be a lot of people watching this who have been in dark places, and they don't hear people who are Christians and been raised in church actually admit what it means to say your mind is in turmoil.
My mind was in turmoil. I was not myself. I was so bitter, so angry, so numb. All I could think of, I don't know how to swim. I haven't learned how to do that yet. And all I could think was just going into that ocean and just walking until I just drop off. And, and yes, it would make sense. I have taught Sunday school. I've taught youth. I've done all of these things. I have prayed other people through. But in that moment, I was just in a place I couldn't get out of on my own. And I had looked out at the ocean. It was dark, and I could see the moonlight shining over the ocean. And I just said, God help. God help me. And no sooner had I said that did Beth respond back via text. And she goes, hey, I'm so sorry that it's taken so long. I just put down my grandson. Or we're talking basically, why are you at the beach? Basically, what's going on? And I said, my mind is also, she says, just basically come here. Now, it was an hour and some extra minute drive. So you realize I'm not even getting to her where she's residing at the time till almost 2 a.m. And that whole drive there, I was just driving there. I don't even know really how I got there. I just got there. And I got there, and she came out of the house, and we met in the driveway, and she again just come over and just wrapped her arms around me, and I was stood there as a solid rock. Numb. I couldn't feel everything, and she just held me. And she didn't say a word right now. She just held me. And then as long as she goes, okay, you breathe, let it out, breathe, let it out. Anyway, I did. We prayed. She prayed. I'm telling you, that woman is a woman of God. She knows how to pray heaven down. And where we were in the middle of a driveway, and she's praying heaven down, and she's basically speaking life again and breaking off these things that come on. Now, she didn't know all that had happened. All she knew is that she'd seen me a few hours earlier at church, and I wasn't okay.
Right.
And so she began to pray, and I began to cry, and she said, let's talk about it. So we stood out there till after 4 a.m. in the driveway. And she looked at me, and she had tears in her eyes, because you got to promise me you will not quit. You have to promise me you will not give up. She says, I need you. Now, that was the first time I had ever heard her say that to me, and it was such a foreign concept. Why would you need me?
Right.
Like, you have your church, you have your family, you have your kids, you have your grandkids. Why do you need me? And she said, I've been praying for God to send me a friend, and he knew that I needed you and you needed me. And we cried and we prayed until all that stuff broke off. And before I left, she goes, oh my gosh, you look like a different person. You look like you again. And I'm so thankful, because it was just, like I said, a month later, her grandbaby was born. I got to be there. I went to camp that year and got to be a co-counselor. And, things started to move in a direction that Satan really wanted me to not pursue. And I'm very, very, very thankful, looking back today, that in that moment of turmoil, God did send a lifeline. And I know there are people who go through this, and that God doesn't send a lifeline. There isn't a magical phone call or a magical person. And you say, well, what happens then? I can reassure you that even if there's not a physical person, that God still loves you, and he does not want you to end your chapter that way, because there's more on the other side. That was in May. I started of course, radiation just a couple weeks later. Went through that process. The last day of radiation, Beth was there with balloons and everything to celebrate, and her daughter had just had that baby, and the baby, their daughter had a little complication. She had to go back to the hospital, so she came and loved on me, and then went back to the hospital with her. And then we went to General Assembly, and then in July, I was a youth camp co-counselor, and one thing God had spoken to me on Love Day of that year before this had ever happened is, you've asked for me to heal you, and I've sent people to help you heal. And you have to allow them to love you. And I did not understand what he meant at the time. What do you mean allow them to love me? But I understand that now. I never realized how important it is to be present and to take people seriously, even when it seems like nothing.
That's still hard.
It's still hard, but I'm very, very thankful. By that year, that fast forwarded that. Amelia was born that year. Camp was good. I got to go to SeaWorld for Clay's birthday with them in October. I got to go not snow skiing, but what do you call snow tubing? I got to go snow tubing. I got to do a watch night service with them. They just engulfed me and allowed me to feel like I belonged. It was the first time in my life I had ever felt like I was a part of something real. It was, I would beg God at night, I said, God, please don't take this away from me. I needed this my whole life, and now you've sent it. And I just hope that I can be that for somebody else one day.
So basically, you went through your season of loneliness, and then God gave you a season of inclusion.
Yes. Yeah. It was great. It felt really good to be a part of something and not have to pretend. We, like you had said before, we talked about before, we had our church life, and we had to be for the church people what they needed us to be. So it was very rare to have real moments with the church people. There were moments,
Always.
Yeah, there were always moments, but to have like an intimate, true, connected moment like that, where you can be that vulnerable and not be judged, was very impactful. I mean, that truly changed the entire trajectory of my life. And I think back now, had I not had the breast cancer and had I not had all of that, I don't know that healing would have come the way it did as fast as it did. I may have been one of those people who were in my 60s or 70s and never experienced healing, or never experienced love or inclusion, or what it means to say, no, I really do want to hear what you feel and what you think.
So during all of this season of inclusion that you were having, and this healing, rebuilding moment, I was still sitting at home in the trenches. On every trip that you took with the family, every moment you had someone hug you, I was just in my ashes, listening to the treacherous screams of my father suffering. And thinking about that, and something I've never really asked about from an outside perspective, did you think that I was okay?
Oh no, I knew you weren't okay. I knew you weren't okay, but I also knew that you did not have the emotional and mental capacity to handle breast cancer or Bell's palsy or anything else. You could not take anything else. I knew you weren't okay, but I also knew that I had to protect and shelter you from that. I mean, my goodness, how much can one person take? You were 24/7 trying to take care of Dad. You were still going to work. You weren't sleeping. You were still trying to do the church thing. You did not have the capacity to be there like I needed in that moment. And God knew that. I mean, God knew that.
Yeah, and some of these questions are set up purposely because we're talking about the girl in ashes and we talk about perspective. And one of them it says, from your perspective, what did you think I needed during those 14 months that I did not get?
Oh. I kept encouraging you to take a break, but you refused. You know, I really felt like you needed a break. I know the one time that you and I did go out of town, you were terrified to leave and thank the Lord, the man you were seeing at the time was there to check in on him, and you had everybody in motion. Hey, cousin Steve, cousin Keith, hey, I want you to call him on this day. Brother Mark, touch base with him on this day. You know, you had people around the clock touching base and calling for no apparent reason other than, hey, how you doing today? Because you knew the hardest time was nighttime. And
Big time.
and when Dad was going through his torment, it was very hard for him to be able to see outside of that. So we were out of town. We came out of town for your birthday. We were at this beautiful cabin, and I have this cake and balloons, and you sit there and cry. You video Dad. Dad is sad. You're crying. Okay. You know, and I understand. I think I understand it better now. I mean, when you love and you care deeply, and you know, I don't blame you for any of those things. I'm just glad that now, since time has passed, you are able to see it. That the greatest thing you did need was a mental break. You needed like a positive mental break, a healthy mental break, because it was your life 24/7.
So we move through the 14 months, and it says, do you remember where you were when you got the call
Oh yeah.
about Dad?
Yes, I was in my office at work. You called me and told me I needed to go over to the house that Keith had called, and we think he might, you know, that Dad might be dead. I'm like, no way, you know, there's no way this is possible. So I rushed over there, and Angie's in the driveway. I didn't understand why she was in the driveway. Keith was there, and then Angie said, just go to the hospital. There was police there too. Go to the hospital. They're taking him to Dunn. I said, okay. So I drive to the hospital, and I'm still no clue what's going on. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I get there, I talk to you. You said, hey, XYZ is about to be there. He's going to meet you there. I'm right behind him. And we go, I said, oh, okay. So again, I have really no idea what's happening at this point. So we go in there. I wait for you. We come in. It wasn't long. They took us into that room. And I'm thinking, you know, maybe his sugar dropped. Maybe he had, you know, I wasn't thinking death by any means. I was thinking, oh, well, maybe his potassium was low, or maybe just fainted. And they came in and told us they had worked on him for 40-something minutes, and I was like, this doesn't look good. And so then, of course, Steve came, and they told us, and I really couldn't believe it. I had a lot of guilt at the time because the night before Dad had asked me to come over, and I didn't come over because, quite honestly, I didn't feel up to it. It was like you had mentioned before. You came to the house. It was the same. Everything looked the same. Nothing had changed. It's the same vibe, same everything. And there was sadness there. It wasn't laughter. It wasn't let's come over. And there was, you couldn't see beyond what was there. I mean, you had moments, like you said, when he would think about the future, but a majority of the time he wanted me to come over because he said I reminded him of our mother, and I thought so differently than you and him. He wanted to hear my thoughts and, you know, poke fun and maybe
challenge them.
Yeah, challenge them. One of his favorite things is, oh, there's no blood on the knife, meaning that, you know, that nobody's guilty if there's no blood on the knife.
Yeah, he always thought that she didn't really have any standards as long as there was no blood on the knife.
Yes, he was very black and white in his thought process, and my thought process is very vibrant in color. But I really could not believe that was how it was going to end. I really did not believe that's how it was going to end, because it really seemed like the enemy got the victory in that moment.
Oh, it still does. Still feels that way for me.
I mean, I know for a fact that God could have 100% healed him here on earth. He could have taken his pain and suffering away. He could have just gone in the rapture. I mean, there could have been great things. And we always say, well, things happen for God to get the glory of it. I don't know, even now, as 2 years later, where God has necessarily received glory from it.
Nope.
I don't know about that. In that time, of course, not only have we lost our parents, we've lost, everything. The church.
We're not there yet. That's episode 9 or 8.
Okay.
We're on 6.
Well, we lost our church too. I mean, we lost everything.
That's coming. If you're interested in how we lost our church and my whole identity, that's coming in a couple episodes. But how did it feel in that day when we walk out of the hospital and the 4 of us get in the car together and you're the last person I have left and you've watched me give 24/7 to the man that's now gone? How did that feel?
Like a terrible dream. I really hope that it wasn't real. I mean, we blocked everything with Mom. I still couldn't believe this was real. I know it was funny because we got in the car and went to the same beach I was just at a year prior to, but it was different this time. We weren't going there to end it. We were going there to get lost in the elements that were there. I was so thankful. We talk about placement, and I know you'll probably talk about this later, but I was so incredibly thankful then, and even more so now for, I had at that time, I had the pastor's wife that I mentioned, and I had my cousin's wife, Beth, at that time, and my best friend, Sam, and but later on, God moved in other people, my friend Michelle, different ones. But I was so thankful that in that season, whether it was good, bad, right, wrong, whatever, that he had placed the friendships that you had at that time in your life to help you get through it. Because otherwise, I don't know that you could have. It's hard when you're trying to be there for the other person, it's just you and that person, but you don't know how much that person can really take at this point. I mean, I feel like you had been at your breaking point so on the edge for so long. I didn't know how much longer it was going to be, or you're just going to just break,
Right.
And of course that night your friends were with us, and you came over to the house that night, and your friends stayed with us. I mean, we had this. I mean, this was it. We had no idea how. I give props to my cousin Steve and his wife Beth, because I don't know how we would have done any of it had they not been there to guide, because I wasn't capable. You weren't capable. We were like, oh, we're in autopilot. We have no idea what's going on. And what the crazy thing is, that we were at the funeral home that day, and my cousin's wife Beth was there, and she went to go hug me that day, and she said, what are you doing? Basically, I can tell that you're blocking up again, basically. All this great work that we've done to get you here, and now I can already feel a shift. It's the walls are coming back. Because I think in that moment we had to realize, I don't know what we're going to build now.
Right. Broken.
Beyond.
My house had burned down at that point, internally. What would you tell someone who is caring for a sick parent?
Be patient. Just take your time. Take breaths. Walk away. We need to walk away. Allow yourself to take care of yourself. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to feel a lot of things, but truly you cannot pour out of an empty cup. You have to take time to refill yourself, even if it's just a 15-minute break, a 5-minute break, just walking outside, clearing your head, listen to a praise song, watching something funny on a video. You have to take time for yourself because it is mentally, physically, and emotionally draining.
What do you wish people understood about grief? That maybe you've learned just from these experiences that we didn't understand ourselves.
One of the greatest things that frustrated me is if people felt like it was just time to move on. Like they had in their own mind said, oh, it's been a month, it's been several weeks.
Right.
You know,
There's no timeline.
right.
That's what you need to understand about grief. There is no timeline.
Grief, there is no timeline. All things trigger it, and it always comes unexpectedly. It could be a song, it could be a place, it could be a food, it could be a smell, it could be a scent, it could be, well, a scent and a smell, same thing. It could be a food, it could be a commercial, it could be a shoe, it could be a dress, it could be a place you went to.
It could be a podcast.
You just literally, you never know what's going to trigger it, and when it does, it's going to come out of nowhere, and you're not going to know how to handle it. And you will think that you've come past it. You will think that I've moved forward. I'm good. I haven't thought about, that today, or I focused on something else. And then when it hits you out of nowhere, it takes you back. So be patient. Give yourself grace. Take care of yourself. Even on those days when you don't want to get up, even on those days when you don't feel like it, push yourself, even if it's just to take a shower, if it's just to run water on your head or throw water on your face. Just keep moving, because it will get somewhat better. It'll never be the same, and it won't ever feel good, but you will eventually be able to smile again, and you will eventually be able to laugh again. And a lot of times for both of us, right after the parents' funeral, people were just reminiscing of stories and laughing, and we were like, ugh, it's too soon, people.
Oh my gosh, go somewhere else, please.
But over time, you do get to laugh with those stories, and you do get to remember those stories. And take pictures. I tell people, take pictures. Write down things in journals, because videos, because when your mind blocks it out, you will have proof that yes, it did happen.
Now, we're gonna wrap it up real soon because we're running out of time. But what is something that you think Mom and Dad would be proud of at this moment in our journey?
Oh my goodness. Dad, they would both be extremely proud of you for the work you're doing with the city. The small business leaderships, the seminars that you're conducting, the fact that you have your own business now. So not only are you selling jewelry, you're selling clothing, you're selling marketing tools, you're working in construction. You have so much that they would just be beaming with pride. I mean, your face was on the web, on the web, JSEB website for the official city that we live in.
Yeah, but what would they be proud of for you, Boo? Because this one's about you.
Oh, I like to think that they would be proud of me because I just completed my ministerial internship program and have officially become an ordained minister in the denomination. Yes, in the denomination that my dad was a part of for 40 years. I want to continue that legacy, even through all things, good, bad, in between. God is still faithful. He's still in control. He's still moving, even when we don't see it. He has places for us to go. He has people already set in motion. And if I could give any advice to anyone, be open to His will and His way. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, and just be obedient even when it doesn't make sense, because God has plans far beyond the realm of our imagination.
And sometimes we have to be patient while he rebuilds what
Yes.
has been fallen into ashes. Now, that's going to kind of wrap up this very brief her perspective, and it was a lot to unpack. We have seen a plethora of journeys, not only through the loss of mom and dad, but the cancer journey, the experience, and the moments where the enemy tried to overtake the mind, but God used people in seasons and in time. So if anything we take away from an outside listener today is a couple bullet points, is that one thing that our parents taught us both is that you don't quit. There is always a new perspective. There is always a chance to rebuild. And even in your darkest days, there is a purpose. There is going to be someone that shows up some way or another, whether it's an unexpected cousin's wife or a boyfriend that looks like it shouldn't be the right answer at the time, but God places him there because he cares. And although I sit here and do this podcast because I still feel very much in the ashes stage and trying to rebuild, and I feel very much like I'm still dealing with my own anger about everything. At the end of the day, from the other side of the perspective, how someone else has dealt with their grief, we can tell you for sure that there is more than what is in the moment. In the grief moment, in the numbness, a new day comes, a new journey happens. And for two sisters who were taught to avoid, to emotionally block, to figure it out and don't bother other people with your grief and your problems, after the dropping of our father, we're leading into episode 7, which is called Running. For the next year and a half, together, we ran. So, in closing, we heard through Charity's eyes tonight. Next week, we're going to hear a different perspective and a different direction. A series of events where two people said, okay, cool. Let's just go explore what else is out there and not deal with grief.